Hi all, I'm doing something very different this year when it comes to seasonal update, and I wanted to give you kind of an overview through video of what you might be seeing this season as you get started. So today we're going to talk a bit about Spotted Wing Drosophila. I'll do a reminder of disease prevention practices and disease management practices that you should consider adopting. We'll also talk a bit about tomato diseases, and then finally end a bit when it comes to some of the resources available to you as a grower. To begin with, I want to talk a bit about Spotted Wing Drosophila. This is an insect that still remains a huge problem when it comes to those who are growing any kind of soft fruit. Soft fruit includes a lot of our berries: blackberries, raspberries, strawberries, blueberries. Sometimes we also see it in peaches, sometimes we also see it in apples. It depends on the year. The major concern we have with Spotted Wing Drosophila is that it's a very minuscule insect that actually deposits its eggs into the fruit as it's beginning to ripen, or it deposits eggs into overripe fruit. The eggs then hatch in the form of maggots, and you then have a larger outbreak of the adult form that keeps depositing more eggs around the crops that you're growing. From a grower's standpoint, it's also a huge concern to us because we can take the ripe fruit to the farmer's market, we sell the fruit to a consumer, the consumer then takes it home, they wash it, and then all of a sudden maggots start hatching out of the fruit itself. And you've potentially lost that customer right there. So we need to be very mindful of being aware of if we have Spotted Wing Drosophila or not in our operation. The best way to determine if I have this problem and if I have this insect is to actually put out some traps. A trap can be pretty simple. It actually can be a clear plastic deli container. I can drill holes into it. The insect can then get inside the holes themselves because I put actually a solution at the base of this deli container, a liquid solution. Some of the solutions include ones that have yeast, other ones are a bit more complicated. But the adult form is attracted to this smelling liquid. It goes into the trap, and then it's in the base of the trap. And then from there, I have to use a microscope and be able to diagnose and see if I actually have the female or the male form in the crops that I'm growing. At the same time, once I've determined I have that, I can then adopt some chemical pesticide solutions. It's important to also note that there are organic solutions, OMRI solutions, available to you as a grower, as well as those traditional pesticides as well. There's going to be a lot more resources in the email that I've sent you, those that actually can help you build these traps, know the best solutions available to actually put in the traps themselves, and to get you updated as far as what Spotted Wing Drosophila looks like and the problems that you might run into with it. Disease management depends a lot on prevention. But before I get into that a bit, I do want to talk a lot about what disease actually is. For a disease to occur, I need a pathogen. In most plants, it's actually a bacteria or a fungus that is my pathogen or my microbe. The pathogen needs to be present. If the pathogen is not present, then I'm not going to have disease occurring. So the pathogen is present, say, in the area that I'm growing. I also need very good environmental conditions. This could be hot weather, it could be wet weather, it could be cooler temperatures at night, cooler temperatures during the day. It could also be dry conditions. Each pathogen likes different environmental conditions. So some may not really like the dry conditions, where other ones really like those wet, humid conditions in order for them to really thrive in that type of weather. So environmental conditions is very important for disease to occur. I also need a good host. And the host is going to be my actual plant. The way the pathogen might get to the host, though, it might be that I'm trellising tomatoes and I'm using a string, it cuts into the stem of the tomato, the pathogen is there, and it can move into the host quite easily. But all three are going to need to occur in order for disease to actually occur. If one of these is missing, then I'm not necessarily going to have disease problems that season, based on my disease triangle. The best solution that I can tell you, and the best preventative measure that I can really strongly encourage you to do, is to actually water in the morning. A lot of times we might consider watering in the evening. If you water in the evening, you have wet foliage sitting there in the dark. And if there's a pathogen there, it quite easily can move from plant to plant through water itself and with wet foliage itself as well. So if you water in the morning, if the pathogen is there, it allows for any wet foliage to dry out the rest of the day. and can really help prevent disease from spreading and potentially even disease from occurring in your operation. At the same time, you need to be cleaning your hand tools season to season. I know this can be a pain, I know it can take quite some time, but any kind of hand tool can easily hold these pathogens that will overwinter in the soil, in the cracks and crevices of the tools that you're using, any of the plant debris that maybe came into contact with the hand tools. So you need to clean them, disinfecting them with a bleach solution, as well as disinfecting them even with a rubbing alcohol solution can be pretty useful when it comes to kind of getting them ready from season to season. It's also important to recognize that you also need to clean anything such as a tomato cage and a tomato stake. I know this is a nuisance. I know that it can be very hard and complicated sometimes to get a really clean tomato cage and tomato stakes. But we've seen season after season sometimes that late blight and any pathogens may actually overwinter on those tomato cages, and now you're reintroducing them into your garden. So you need to clean those tomato cages and those tomato stakes. Crop rotation means a very good solution as well. Rotating among families season after season can help prevent any of those microbes that may have overwintered in the soil from actually attacking the same family members season after season. So by rotating them, that can hopefully prevent some of those pathogens from leading to disease. And if you're using any mulch, that can also be really nice and keep water from splashing up onto the foliage of the plant. It can also keep sometimes that mixture of soil and water from actually splashing up onto the plant itself and spreading disease that way. Straw, plastic mulches, any other kind of mulch that can hopefully keep down weed pressure along with keep down any kind of splash up from occurring can be quite useful when it comes to preventing disease. At the same time, there's always disease-resistant varieties. A lot of times we see this with tomatoes, but there's numerous other ones out there available to you that can help you when it comes to disease problems you see season after season. So be on the lookout for those because they can really help you prevent some disease from occurring. I want to spend a bit of time on focusing on tomato diseases today. Last summer, we saw a bit of bacterial spot, bacterial speck. We also saw a bit of septoria, and we also saw a bit of early blight. And the reason we saw most of these had a lot to do with our July and our late June. We had these cooler evening temperatures, and like I said with the previous slide, that a pathogen likes only certain types of environmental conditions, this was kind of why we saw most of these occurring. Other pathogens like more hot weather conditions, and so because we didn't have those in certain times of our last summer, that was kind of why we saw most of these occurring. This summer, we're still not sure. It could be very hot, it could be more humid, we could run into some colder evening temperatures in July. So we still are not sure, but we almost need to prepare for the worst and prepare for any type of environmental conditions that might be occurring. When it comes to disease prevention with tomatoes, it is about prevention. So it's the mulching that I'm putting around my tomatoes. I also want to be mindful of crop rotation, so rotating my tomatoes and rotating my other solanaceous families in different areas to hopefully prevent disease from occurring. I also want to clean my stakes. Any hand tools I use along with those tomato cages can hopefully prevent disease from occurring. As I'm working in my garden, I also want to be monitoring, and this can be a pretty easy step where I'm looking at a lot of the older leaves. And the older leaves are actually going to be more at the base of the tomato plant itself. So be on the lookout for any yellowing, any blacking, sometimes even very interesting kind of circular brownish circles you might see as well. That can all be disease starting off. So I want to be actively monitoring these older leaves because I can sometimes catch it before it actually becomes a huge major problem in the area that I'm growing. So start with prevention, but also being very mindful of monitoring on a weekly basis, or even more so. And then as a wrap up for today's seasonal update, I just want to really encourage you to take to heart some of those preventative measures I've talked to you about today. These can really get you on a good path when it comes to actually preventing diseases and also just very good basic garden practices that can help you address weed management and sometimes even insect management and soil nutrient management too. If you are growing any soft fruit and you're concerned about Spotted Wing Drosophila, be on the lookout with those resources I have listed in my email that can really help you start making these great traps. Because if you're growing them and they start ripening of this fruit, you really need to start putting those out there in order to prevent Spotted Wing Drosophila from becoming a very large issue for you as the season goes along. And can really get you figuring out that you've got it, and now you need to figure out a good chemical solution and a good chemical pesticide to apply. If you are a grower, know that the U of I Plant Clinic is available to you. They're already accepting submissions and accepting samples. You can send plants, soil, as well as even fruit samples to them in order to determine what those problems might look like and what those problems might be. Resources and the best way to contact them you'll find in the email I have sent to you as well to kind of give you some guidelines on how to submit a sample to them. If you are a homeowner and a backyard grower, strongly encourage you to contact the Master Gardener Hotline as you run into problems on a seasonal basis. They're available to you. Contacting them through the phone, you can easily get in touch with them and they can help you find really good solutions for the things that you are growing and help you determine what problems you might have and how you can address them. Hours and time will sometimes vary from county to county, so contact your local extension office in Joe Davis, Stevenson, or Winnebago counties, and they can get you in touch with the Master Gardener Hotline. If you are a grower, know that you can always call me at this number that I have listed here. It's the best way to reach me, and we can schedule a site visit. I can also schedule a way for us to kind of meet up and determine any problems that you might be having when it comes to the things that you're growing. At the same time, you can also reach me at gmccarty@illinois.edu. It's a very good way for us to correspond. This is also a great way for you to send photos. I highly encourage you to do that as you're growing things and things just don't seem right. Please feel free to contact me, whether through phone, but also send some good photos, and that can really get us on the right path to determining the best solution for the diseases and potentially those insects that you might be dealing with this season. And with that, have a good start to your season, and I will see you at the farmers markets.